Hello! Who would have thought we would be doing this on, well, let's see, what is it? A Wednesday afternoon. Chatting, talking to a green light flashing at me because there is post-hurricane chaos in our midst. Hello, everyone. In all seriousness, first and foremost, I hope you're all well. I hope you are on safe ground. I really do hope so. I hope you're on dry ground. I hope you're on high ground. I hope you're on ground. I'm all right right now. It was chaotic, of course, but I am here and I'm able to do this, and I'm very grateful to be able to kind of tweak our pedagogical praxis so that we can continue conversations and keep up with the semester as best as we can. There will be some adjustments that I'll have to make, of course, and once I have a better sense of when we are going to open up for business, if you will, I will send you a revised syllabus, but I'm going to do my utmost to not take away too much from your educational experience, because that is important to me, but also perhaps much more important to you, because you are the students. You're here to gain things, and I want to do the best I can to ensure that you are gaining insights, gaining literary knowledge, in theoretical, contextual, historical knowledge that is connected to Shakespeare. So I'm going to do my best to keep it as tight as is possible, despite or maybe in spite of what's going on right now. So first, I want to say, if my voice is being nasal, it's because I have allergies, and you must forgive me. Second, I want to say this particular lecture is not going to be a lecture per se, but just a sort of breakdown of the logistics of how these lectures are going to work, and also of what my expectations are of you in terms of reciprocity, comments, feedback, reading, completing the required assignments, and so on. Right, so thank you, those of you that have been able to log into either Facebook, our groups page, or on Moodle and provide really thoughtful insights and comments. Thank you very much for that. I'm very grateful. I also want to say that the lectures that I've designed are responses in some ways to the questions that you have posed, or that you have come up with, the observations you've made, right? So I'm going to clump 2 questions per lecture, because that's how I can keep up with the time that the recording allows me to have, which is about 15 minutes. So each lecture will last about 15 minutes. I will walk around. I don't know if I'll walk around, but I tend to just walk around. This is my study at home. You will get to see it when you come to a semester end party that I will have in respect of you, and to commemorate our semester together, engaging with and studying Shakespeare. So if you were to come to my home, then you will get to see this study, which is usually where I spend most of my days. But anyway, I might walk around, talk as I'm walking, quote passages, and so on. These videos will go up on Facebook as well as on Moodle, and I will hope that you will obviously pay attention to them closely, respond to them. I will expect you to comment on them, have further questions if you have, and so on, so that we have some level of engagement and conversation that stems from these conversations. What I do want and expect you to do is to carry on with the reading as I have required. So by today you should have read the entirety of Midsummer Night's Dream, by yesterday, we should have read the entirety of Midsummer Night's Dream, and by tonight, I'm expecting you to have read Acts 1 and 2 of Twelfth Night. I know I'm speeding you up just a little bit, but this is so that we can have at least 2 of the plays completed, and then we can pick up our pace for the remainder of the semester when we meet in person, I hope. And I hope that will be very soon. I can't tell you how much I miss you. So please keep up with the reading. I realize many of you are able to do it and are doing it. I also realize a few of you are not able to keep up because you might not have internet access and so on. But the minute you do, I will hope that you will make up and kind of catch up with those of us that are engaging in this alternative pedagogical environment, right? So those of you that don't have access at the moment to these lectures, but will have access to them eventually, it'll be your responsibility to keep up after going through these lectures, after going through the comments, the threads that are already out there in our discussions and responding to them. You will, I'm sure you will do it without being asked repeatedly to do so, but I hope you will understand why I need you to keep up. It's because your educational experience is of utmost value to me, and I don't want to compromise that in any way, right? Okay, so I identified 6 questions in Midsummer Night's Dream that I think are important for us to address collaboratively. You have brought up many of them, which is what is so wonderful, that I can then focus my attention on these questions that have been observed by you, are posed by you, and that you're curious about, right? So I am going to address these in clumps of 2. In no particular order, I'm going to talk about Oberon and intentionality. I know a lot of you were wondering about what the is Oberon thinking, right? And why does he have double standards when it comes to his treatment of women and his response to transgressive women, right? So I'll talk about that in the guise of Oberon's intentionality, right? What does he mean? And I'll also talk about another aspect that many of you brought up, which is, how is this play funny, or why is this play funny? And I'll talk about that when I think about comic disruption and generic disturbance, right, in the plays of Shakespeare. So I will talk about how this play is exemplary in disturbing generic expectations and why it might be doing that. So we'll talk about that. I want to talk about bottom and monstrosities. Some of you did bring up the weirdness or the horror even of characters like Demetrius and Theseus and Oberon. But I want to talk about monstrosity at large in this play and how it is epitomized by, say, Titania and Bottom's kind of fleeting erotic moment, right? So I want to talk about that because it's very important for us to note as its state of exception within the play, which might otherwise seem to be reinforcing a lot of patriarchal notions that, of course, generically a comedy is supposed to, right? In terms of reinforcing marriage and progeny and so on. We talked about this already when we had discussed how a comedy is not simply funny. In fact, a comedy need not be funny, but a comedy needs to end in marriage with a promise that there will be babies produced out of these marriages, right? So how, despite that kind of patriarchal drive of comedy, is monstrosity inserted into the play as a transgressive alternative, right? As a sort of moment of radical suspension of patriarchy, I think is very important for us to note. If I'm rambling, if I seem to have no grammatical, logical continuity, it is because I'm rambling. Isn't it awful? Welcome to my world of awkwardness. Hopefully there will be a larger thematic connection that you can draw from these lectures, despite my awkward ramblings. I'll try not to ramble. Carrying on. I'll talk about the meta-theatricality of the play that several of you noted. We began to talk about it in terms of the play within a play, but I would like to talk about it specifically in response to one of your comments about how the meta-theatricality connects with class consciousness, right? So thinking about the rude mechanicals and their venturing into the world of theatre, into the world of profit-making theatre, right? And thinking about their class and how contempt from the audience has also to do with contempt for the class of the actors or the writers of the play, the performance, if you will. So I'll talk a little bit about that alongside the fourth wall. Many of you brought up the fourth wall, wondering about its effectivity, how the audience might have perceived this. Some of you talked about theatre reality, which is, there weren't too many actors, and so people double-dipped, if you will. The Oberons and the Thesises were likely played by the same person, could be played by the same person. One of you brought that up. I will talk about the fourth wall in terms of it not being original practice, right? Not being a radical practice, as some people think it might be, but it being something embedded in literary culture, right? Of prologues and epilogues and choruses. So how do these walls, if you will, get erected in modern practices and ideas of theatre? How they don't necessarily limit themselves to the theatre world, the world of drama, but also world of poetry. We can talk about that in a little bit. And finally, last but not least, I want to talk about the Indian boy and about commodification of the other. Some of you observed that very astutely, I might add, that, there is the play's fuzziness about the other and the value of the other is really problematic, so that we have, on the one hand, the Indian boy and the spiced lands of India that are deeply valuable, right? The whole fairy kingdom is at war because of this Indian boy, as some of you have noticed, and some of you suggested that's so trivial. I'm going to argue it's not trivial, and I hope to clarify why it's not trivial, right? But on the one hand, there is that Indian boy who's deeply valuable, unnamed, invisible, pretty much, unless it is in adaptations, which are interesting. But on the other, we have the Ethiop that Hermia becomes when she is othered by the men, right, who formerly were not only enamored of her, adored her, chased her about, were willing to give up conventional life for love of her. So when she's estranged or othered from the normative world that these men occupy, she's called an Ethiop and is considered valueless because she's an Ethiop. So I would like us to think about how this play is racializing and orientalizing the others, and what are the problems with this, right? The visibility of one kind of other and the invisibility of another. I seem to be staring at myself. I don't know what to do. I don't know how you guys manage this. I mean, staring at the green little light is kind of interesting, but after a while I feel like saying, what is going on out here?